if anything can be read into the election results from an off-year election, it is that voters picked pragmatism over ideology. In Virginia, Democrat Terry McAuliffe eked out a narrow victory over Tea Party-backed Republican Ken Cuccinelli. In Alabama, Republicans chose the establishment-backed Bradley Byrne over a Tea Party rival in a special congressional primary runoff election. And New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, running on a bipartisan, inclusive platform, cruised to re-election. David Redlawsk is the director of the Eagleton Center of Public Interest Polling at Rutgers University. He's also a professor of political science, and he joins us via Skype from New Brunswick, New Jersey. Dr. Redlawsk, thank you so much for being with us. We do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Let me start off here, and it might make every other question I'm going to ask you after this moot, but how much can we read into an off-year election like this one?
Well, this is an extremely off-year election, of course. We only had 2 governorships up and a handful of other races. There's a desire to read something in. We want to get some idea of what's going to happen in the next year. But frankly, each of these races has its own dynamic. I think there are some big picture things, but there are also some very local aspects as well.
So then, were there any mandates set forth, particularly in the two governors' races, even the primary runoff race in Alabama? Is there a mandate here that might telescope what the midterm elections might look like?
Well, I think the big question right now is, what are the Republicans doing going forward? There's an internal battle in the Republican Party. Is it going to move to the right with the Tea Party, or are the moderates going to assert more control again? And I think that last night's results suggest, at least it'll be argued, suggest that the Republican Party is better off not lurching far to the right, and that voters reacted that way. The Republican candidate in Virginia, a very strong conservative, probably should have been able to win that election. Terry McAuliffe is not the best Democrat who could have run, and yet he still got beat.
He did get beat, but as you just mentioned, he just eked out that victory. So where does the Tea Party stand in their influence in the GOP? Do these elections tell us anything about their future influence?
Well, I think that Tea Party folks are going to say, look, we lost Virginia not because we had a candidate who is in our ballpark, but instead because we didn't spend enough money, we didn't give it enough focus. They're going to say New Jersey is a special case, it's a very Democratic state, and besides, that vote was really about Chris Christie, not about issues or policies or anything like that. So I think in some sense, this doesn't settle the battle. The Tea Party and the Republican Party remains quite influential, mostly not because of its numbers, but because of the fear it puts into moderate Republicans.
There was, I believe there was a report that Chris Christie said that the Republican Party should take a page out of his playbook. I'm wondering how seriously we should take that. I mean, he's a Republican, but he reached across the aisle. Of course, he accepted aid from the federal government after Superstorm Sandy, and he won in what's traditionally a largely Democratic state. Is there a lot of lessons for the GOP to learn?
It's actually hard to know in some sense. I think a lot of this really is about Chris Christie, and it's about the aftermath of Sandy. Voters in New Jersey are not particularly thrilled with Chris Christie on a policy basis, but they didn't vote on the issues at all. They voted for this guy who was a leader, who stood up and said, I know where I'm going, we're going to fix this. And even if they don't like the way he's going to fix it, they like the very fact that he's a leader. So if there's a lesson for anybody, and frankly it could work on either side of the Republican Party, that is, voters want leaders. They want candidates and officials who will say what they mean and do what they say.
I cringe almost to even ask you this question because the next presidential election is a whole 3 years away and a whole lot could happen. But is Chris Christie the Republicans' man?
Well, he certainly got a good head start. Last night in his victory speech, he all but said, hey, look, the presidency's next. He was really very much about that forward-looking kind of thing. But it's a long haul to the presidential nomination, and it's a very complicated process in the United States. So he's got to deal in particular with some states where Tea Party reigns supreme, and it's going to be interesting to see how well he can play to the right wing of his party after moving so much to the center to make it happen in New Jersey.
Yeah, indeed. I understand the Eagleton Institute hosted a morning after panel today to discuss the results with two former governors. Anything interesting come from those panelists?
Oh, I think, it's kind of the things you would expect. A lot about the power of Chris Christie, his effectiveness as a leader, his ability to connect to people is really, really quite amazing, actually. And so the fact that he did very well in minority communities relative to how Republicans usually do, the fact that he drew a good number of Democrats, that was a lot of the talk. The other big thing, however, was how he had no, what we say, coattails here in New Jersey. That is, the Democrats remained solidly in control of the legislature. The fact that Chris Christie won by 22 points didn't stop voters from then turning around and voting for their favorite Democrat for the state legislature. So that was an interesting question. We didn't see the coattails that you might expect in a situation like this.
And again, acknowledging that the presidential election is still 3 years away, by your estimation, from what you observe, which party has the most to do to form an agenda that would attract the most voters to take the White House next time? The Democrats or the Republicans?
In some sense, it's each one has different challenges. The Republican challenge really is to figure out who they are, how they're going to stay focused, and to keep from lurching too far to the right. Because what happened to Mitt Romney could happen again. A relatively moderate guy who became very right-wing in order to win the nomination, and in the end turned off a lot of centrist voters in the general election. The Democrats, on the other hand, are coming off of a two-term president. There's often fatigue for the party in office, and they're going to have to figure out how to convince voters that you should stay the course, you should stick with a Democrat.
And oh, by the way, what might be a boon for the Republicans is this disastrous rollout of the Affordable Care Act. I imagine they're going to milk that completely dry.
They're certainly going to try to, but I think, by the time we get to the 2014 congressional elections, we will know if this thing is truly a disaster or if it's been recovered from the disaster. I think in the end, voters may well find they like it if these problems can be resolved. But if they can't, the Democrats are likely to be in serious trouble in 2014.
Yeah, on all of these issues, time will truly tell. David Redlawsk, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
You bet.
For more on what the results could mean for the GOP and its goal to attract more minority voters, we invited Orlando Watson to speak with us. He is a spokesperson for the Republican National Party and Communications Director for Black Media, and he joins us via Skype. Thank you so much for being with us, Orlando, and congratulations on your new position.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I want to ask some of the same questions of you that I asked of our last guest, David Redlawsk. First of all, does the Republican Party see a mandate at all in general for the results of the elections just this yesterday?
Well, that's a good question. What we're seeing here as a result of the election are a few things. And first, let me just start by saying that we're proud of all of our candidates, and we're proud that our candidates fought hard races from beginning through the end. But what we're seeing is that people are still extremely dissatisfied with Obamacare, and that our ground game and investments in our ground game has paid off. We've taken what was once thought to be a blowout race in Virginia and made it a competitive one.
Yeah, that's very true. You have to also acknowledge, even though it was a competitive race, the win did go to the Democrat in that regard. Let me ask you about this. Obama was elected to a second term, running on his affordable care. Senate Democrats maintained their majority in the Senate in the last presidential election. The government shutdown tactic did not seem to work in repealing or defunding the Affordable Care. So what is the Republican Party going to do differently in the run-up to the next election cycle, which would be the midterms?
Well, look, we've identified a big opportunity here, and the American people have made it very clear that they do not want the president's health care law. It's not the Affordable Care Act. It's the Unaffordable Care Act. People are losing their jobs because of this health care law. People are losing their health care plans because of the president's health care law. Premiums are skyrocketing, and it's hurting people in their pockets. And, honestly, what we plan on doing is we're going to see a continued effort on behalf of our party and members of our party to scrap this health care law once and for all. And so this is just the beginning. And yesterday's result, again, we took what was thought to be a blowout and made it a competitive race because because the American people disapprove of this president's healthcare law, and our investments in our ground game and reaching out to voters really paid off. Now, another takeaway that we have from this election, from the elections from last night, from the victory of Governor Chris Christie in New Jersey, is the fact that we can start to build off of things that we know work, and that's reaching out and engaging new communities and being in places where we have not necessarily been before. That means engaging with the African American community. That means engaging with the Hispanic community, showing up to HBCUs, showing up to Black churches, showing up to the places where people live, places where people work, and places where people worship. And if we do that, we can be successful as a party by expanding the electorate, and people can be successful as well, because the Republican Party is there to fight for them and to fight for policies that we know work, policies that we know put people back to work, policies that we know allow children to succeed.
Okay, Orlando, let me jump in there and get a question into, because that's part of your role there with the Republican Party, is to engage the African American community, to increase diversity in the base. And I understand what you said. Part of the strategy is to show up, is to be there. But let me ask you this: how will you adjust the agenda of the Republican Party to include issues that are of interest and are vital to the African American community? Because in many cases, it would seem that the Republican agenda runs counter to the concerns of the real life issues of Black folk. How are you going to do that?
Well, I think you have it backwards there. I'd have to disagree with you. It's the policies of the party, our positive vision for expanding opportunity, whether you're an adult who's looking for a good paying job, or a child who wants to leave a failing school.
I don't know how I have it backwards. I'm just going to interrupt you there. I don't know how I have it backwards when it seems like the Republicans, of course, want smaller government, and African Americans are overrepresented in a number of issues where government help is important. It seems that the Republicans have also favored cutting education and support for the paying for education. So I don't know that I do have it exactly backwards.
Well, reducing government spending isn't the end goal. It's a means to an end. The end goal is getting more people back to work and economic growth, because a rising economic tide will lift all boats. So that's what we're focused on. We're committed to going to bat for adults who want good paying jobs. How do you achieve that? By getting the government out of the way. That expands opportunity, increases opportunity, and allows people to put their talents and skills to use. And when it comes to school choice and education reform, it's much needed. Rather than trapping children in failing schools, let's give them an opportunity. Let's give parents a choice to decide where their kids go to school, so we could give children a chance to have a brighter future.
Okay,
so,
let me get to another couple issues before I run out of time with you. Is Chris Christie your man for 2016?
Me personally, that's
the Republican Party. You know what I mean, Orlando.
That's for the voters to decide.
That's all you have to say?
Yeah, I think that's for the voters to decide. What we're focused on here at the party in 2014 and in 2016 is taking back the Senate, and ultimately in 2016 taking back the White House.
Okay, let me see if I can get you to say more about this. How will the Republican Party, let me be clear, manage the interests and the efforts of the Tea Party going forward, considering the failed efforts in this election, as well as with the government shutdown and the failed effort to repeal or defund Obamacare?
Well, the Republican Party is committed to being an inclusive party, whether you're from the Tea Party movement or whether you're from the Black community. We're open for everyone, and we're open for new ideas, and I think that's what makes us stronger. So going forward, I believe if we stick to our core principles and our core values, which are our strengths, and that's going to bat to expand opportunity for folks, whether they be adults or children. I think we'll be successful, and people will be successful. People will have more opportunities to get ahead. I mean, I'm a young Black male, and there are people my age who are struggling right now in this economy to get by. They're struggling to find a job. They're dealing with student loan payments. They're looking for access to capital so they can start their business. But the economy is suffocating because of the policies of this president and the Democrats.
All
Ultimately.
right, and just to
we need
bring a
change.
little bit of perspective to
Change
what you say, I don't know that the economy is suffering. It is growing slowly, albeit, and in fact, the stock market closed at an all-time high.
This Friday, there's a jobs report that's going to come out, and despite what the numbers say, I can tell you from on the ground, what I'm hearing from people is that opportunities are fleeting. They're disappearing at a fast rate. And you and I both know that when America catches a cold, Black America gets pneumonia. And things just haven't improved in terms of the economic indicators for our community, for the Black community. And after 5 years under President Obama, we have to start asking ourselves, what have we improved? Are we better off today than we were 5 years ago?
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Orlando Watson, again, congratulations to you. Thank you so much. Hope to be able to talk to you again soon.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
For the first time in more than 2 decades, a Republican won't be mayor of New York City next year. New York City Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio went to City Hall Wednesday to meet with outgoing Mayor Michael Bloomberg. De Blasio's landslide victory was a repudiation of 2 decades of hard-nosed, business-minded governance. In other elections, workers at the Seattle-Tacoma Airport appear headed to have the highest minimum wage in the country. A ballot measure to raise the rate to $15 an hour seems to be winning, but a final tally won't be known for several days. And in Houston, the Astrodome appears doomed after voters rejected a proposal to raise money to revitalize the aging structure. The stadium will most likely be destroyed. That's too bad. And you're watching Arise America.